Good evening. We are learning tonight Maseches Megillah, Daf Yud Aleph, and as well Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Buckle up. It is a big Amud, and it's not difficult. It's very fast, actually. So we will be done in time in Yirtzeh Hashem. Tomorrow, no shiur, obviously, as it's Friday, blot and half on Shabbos. So that means that for Shabbos, we're going to do Yud Beis Amud Beis and Daf Yud Gimel. We've given an hour. We may actually use the hour. It's three hefty Amudim. No. We're staying on schedule. I don't like getting behind. Okay, here we are, 3 lines down. We were in the midst of a collection of statements of Amoraim of how they taught, which topics, I should say, that they like to speak about in Maseches Megillah. So line 3, Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Reb Chanina bar Papa pasach lepischa leha parsha samehacha. He would speak about Maseches Megillah in the following way. Harchavas enosh leroshenu banu va'esh v'mayim. We came across water, fire and water. Va'esh b'mei Nebuchadnezzar harasha. Fire was in the times of Nebuchadnezzar. He burnt down the Beis Hamikdash. Uvamayim and water b'mei para when he was gozer al zacharim to throw them into the Yeor. Next, Batotzi Enu Lirvaya, that we would go out with Revaya. That was Bimei Haman, that we were saved in a wonderful way. Rabbi Yochanan Pasach LaPischa LaHaParsha Samehacha. He would start talking about Maseches Megillah in the following way. Last short line, enjoy it. Zachar Chasov Munasol Veis Yisrael Rochel Af Se'aretz Eis Yeshua Selokenu. What does this mean? When is it that the world saw that Hashem saved us? It's kind of like today's equivalent of the 6-day war. Like, whoa, like that was wild. You know, this kind of it just popped when people saw it historically. It was an abnormal occurrence, and everybody understood it. Next. 10 lines down. He would speak about this from another angle. Arino Haim, the lion roars, the dove shokek, and the bear growls. Moshel Rasha al Amdal, and there is an evil ruler over the poor nation. Let's go through each part of the pasuk. Arino Haim Nebuchadnezzar harasha. The lion is a reference to Nebuchadnezzar because the following pasuk refers to Nebuchadnezzar as an aryeh. The aryeh, the lion, comes up from the bushes. That is a reference to Nebuchadnezzar. What about dov shokek? What about the bear that growls? Ze Achashverosh. Because the pasuk in reference to him says ve'aru chiva, there was an extra animal, acharei tinyana dam yeladov. There was another animal that looked like a bear, and this homily in the pasuk is a reference to Achashverosh. V'tani Rav Yosef, no, that is not what is going on here with dov shokek. What does dov shokek mean? Says the Gemara, Elu Parsim, these are the Persians. I don't know that it's so different than our culture, but the Gemara says she'ochlin v'shosin kedov. They would eat ravenously like bears. Umisorvalin basar kedov. They were wrapped in fat, meaning they were overweight, like bears. Umegadlin seir kedov, and they were very hairy people. That's what the Gemara says. And as well, ve'ein lahem menucha kedov. They also didn't have any rest, just like a bear. At least that's true when a bear is not seeking hibernation. Once a bear is in hibernation, he's not moving very far. But to get to that point, he's got to stuff his face very well. What does the pasuk mean when it says Moshel Rasha? That's Zehaman al Amdal. What does it mean that they were Moshel Rasha al Amdal on a poor nation? So does the word poor mean destitute here? Does it mean that they didn't have any money? Says the Gemara, no. It is of course a reference to something larger. 5 lines into the wide lines on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. What does al Amdal mean? Elu Yisrael Shehim Dalim Mina Mitzvos. This has to do with the Jews who were lacking in their mitzvos, seeming to imply, and we'll see more explicitly soon, that due to their lack of mitzvos, these negative things were brought upon them. Next, Rabbi Elazar Pasach LaPischa LaHaParsha Samehacha. He spoke about Megillas Esther in the following way: Ba'atzal time yimacha mekareh. With the laziness, the ceiling will fall. Uveshiflus yadayim, and with the weak hands, yilov habayis, there will be dripping in the house. What's going on here? And here the Gemara is very explicit. Bishvil atzlus shahaya lahem liYisrael shelo asku b'Torah. Since there was a laziness with the Jewish people that they were not osek in Torah, nase sono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was then made that the sono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is euphemism for Hashem himself, was mach. He was weak, or as we'll soon see, he was poor. He wasn't able to help anymore. Ve'ein mach elo ani. We know that the word mach means that he was poor. Shenemar v'machu me'erkacha. If you are less than your value, meaning if you're poor. So then ve'ein mekareh el HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the word mekareh in the pasuk refers to Hashem, and this is the pasuk that we know from Sefer Tehillim, which we read on Rosh Chodesh, and Amar HaMekarev Amayim Aliyosav, a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Next, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Pasach LaPischa LaHaParsha Samehacha. He quoted a pasuk in Tehillim. Is it Tehillim? I think it's Tehillim. Yud. Looks like Tehillim. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Shir Hamalos. There's actually some words missing in the Gemara's quote, but either way, Shir Hamalos, Lule Hashem Haya Lanu, Yomar Na Yisrael, Lule Hashem Shahaya Lanu B'makom B'kum Aleinu Adam. If only Hashem had been there when a man was upon us. What does that mean? Adam V'lo Melech is that there was a man who took us out, and it wasn't a king. It's always better to get a potch from a father than it is from someone who's not a father, right? At least in the context of a relationship, so then we can handle some of the difficulties that are brought upon us. But when it's done by a regular Adam, in this case Haman, it's not kishmak. So we'd rather get the potch from the parent than from someone on the outside. And this was Adam v'lo Melech. This was Haman and not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rava pasach la pischa la haparsha samehacha. 1/4, maybe 1/3 of the way down, Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Rava started speaking about Maseches Megillah in the following ways: Birbos tzadikim yismach ha'am. With the many righteous, the nation will be happy. Uvim shol rasha ye'enach ha'am. And when the evil one rules over, then there will be a sigh among the nations. What does this pasuk mean? Birbos tzadikim yismach ha'am ze Mordechai ve'Esther. They were the righteous ones. And how do we know that there was happiness when they were in charge? Tichsiv, because the pasuk writes, Ve'ayir shashan tzahalavet samecha. The city of Shushan was rejoicing and happy. What about the next part of the pasuk? Uvim shol rasha ye'enach ha'am. That with the ruler who is evil, the nation will sigh. Zehaman tichsiv ve'ayir Shushan navocha. It's sometimes hard to read these psukim and not go into trup because we're so used to hearing the certain words. We just you can't help yourself sometimes. When I was sitting in the base medrash this morning, V'kelim shoni. We're going to see that in the bottom of the Gemara, but it's hard to snap out of it sometimes. A little tacky when you're teaching though. So that's what the Gemara says. Shushan navocha. Next, Rav Mas Namar Mehacha. He said, "Kimi goy gadol asher lo elokim kirovim elav." Look how awesome it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was close to us. That even though we had a Gzeras Shma, that on the 13th of Adar of that year we were all supposed to be destroyed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was still close to us. Next, Rav Ashi Amar Mehacha Ohani Sa Elokim. This is the pasuk that speaks about Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is obviously being equated to this tragedy. However, this pasuk speaks about how Hashem saved us b'yad chazak u'bizron tuya, much like the previous pasuk that Hashem felt close to us. Here the Gemara should insert Rav Amar Mehacha, and then the Gemara should say Vahi b'mei Achashverosh. That was the pasuk we learned a couple of days ago, one of the bad psukim. And Omar Rav, how do we understand the word Vayihi? It's broken up into two words. The first word is Vai, and the second word is Vi. What is the second word? He. One means woe, and one means mourning. Both very bad. Hadad d'chsiv, things were so bad that when even when the Jews would have been willing at that time to sell themselves as slaves, but Paro made a rule that you cannot have a Jewish slave. They had absolutely nothing. They were totally just go back to the language before of the Gemara of vai and he. Things were terrible for them. Ushmuel Amar, while all of the bad things were going on, we know a famous pasuk, Lo me'astim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not disgusted with us, V'lo ge'altim, he was not withdrawn from us, L'chalosam, to destroy us. And how do we understand this? We'll see two pshatim in this pasuk. Number one, almost halfway down, Lo me'astim, what does that mean? Hashem did not forsake us, b'mei Yevanim. That was in the times of the Greeks, in the times of Hanukkah. V'lo ge'altim, that was b'mei Nebuchadnezzar, by the Beis HaMikdash. Yes, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, but the Jewish people continued. We're still here. L'chalosam, when did he save us? Bimei Haman. What about lehafer brisi itam? When did he save us from that? That was bimei parsim. The rest of the pasuk, Ani Hashem Elokehem, that was bimei Gog u'Magog. But speaking about Melchemes Gog u'Magog. However, b'masnisa tana, we have a brisa that reads this pasuk just a little bit differently. The brisa says, what does it mean? Lo me'astim. So lo me'astim is bimei kastim. During the times of the kastim, she'ha'amadti lehem Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, ve'Azariah. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided us with the leadership that we needed at that time with these four Nevi'im. It's a little bit of a kasha on Daniel. Daniel, as we said earlier, did not consider himself a Navi because that was never his charge to be one who passed on messages, but he still had Nevuah. Nevertheless, the Gemara continues halfway down. V'lo ge'altim, what does that part of the pasuk refer to? That was b'mei Yevanim, that during the times of the Greek, that she'emati, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up for the Jewish people, she'emati lohem, Shimon HaTzadik, v'Chashmonai, Uvanav, Umatisya, Kohen Gadol. That all of those leaders were there. What about the Chalosam? What leaders were provided during the phase of the Chalosam? That was b'mei Haman, she'emati lohem Mordechai ve'Esther, that they had those leaders. V'afer brisi tam b'mei Parsim. What about during the times of the Persians? She'emati lohem shel beis Rebbe v'chachmei doros. that there was Rebbe and all of the wise ones of that generation. Lastly, in this pasuk, Ki ani Hashem Elokehem, what does that mean? La'asid lavo, that in the future will be the case, that no one could rule over the Jewish people. Halfway down, the Gemara says, Rav Levi Amar, Mehacha, what really we should be talking about is from here, V'im lo sarishu es yoshvei haaretz. He starts speaking about Megillah Esther, about this pasuk, which is a pasuk that references the fact that Shaul did not kill Agag. What was the result? Haman. So that was his job. He was supposed to kill. He was supposed to kill out Amalek, and he was held accountable for it. But that's referenced here in this pasuk. That's how we would start talking. Rav Chia Amar Mehacha v'Hayaka Asher Dimisa La'asos Lahem Selochem, that bad things are going to happen. Whatever he wanted to happen to them could happen even to us. What does Achashverosh mean? Just a play on words. What does the word Achashverosh mean? So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav says, Achio Shel Rosh. You can already see Achashverosh already played in a little bit. Uben Gilo Shel Rosh. He was the brother of the Rosh, and he was very similar to Ben Gilo, was very similar to the Rosh. Achiv Shel Rosh. He was the brother of the head. Achiv Shel Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha. He was the brother of Nebuchadnezzar. This doesn't mean biologically. It just means that he was very similar to him in his profile. Shenikra Rosh, and we know that Nebuchadnezzar was referred to as Rosh because the pasuk says, "Shenamar Antu Resha di Dahava." You are the head, the Rosh of all of the gold. And Ben Gilo Shal Rosh Achashverosh was similar to the Rosh, to Nebuchadnezzar, in the following way: Who Harag, Nebuchadnezzar had killed, and who Bikesh La'arog, and Achashverosh wanted to kill. Who Hachariv, Nebuchadnezzar successfully destroyed, and who Bikesh lahachariv, and he wanted to destroy. Achashverosh wanted to destroy, but he wasn't that successful. Shneimar, the pasuk tells us, "Uvemalchus Achashverosh b'tchilas malchuso kasav sitna al Yoshvei Yehuda Yerushalayim." He wrote some accusatory statement about Yehuda and about Yerushalayim. So we see from there that Achashverosh wanted to be like Nebuchadnezzar, and therefore his name is Achashverosh Achiv Shel Rosh, just like Nebuchadnezzar. Shmuel Amar, he says a different answer. Things were so difficult for the Jews. There were so many difficult gezeras that effectively they looked depressed. Their face started to look like the bottoms of a pot. You could put even our modern day pots. After a while, there's only so much heat the bottom can take. It starts to absorb some of that blackened color from the fire, and that is what the faces of the Jews looked like. The chora, that was not a color per se, as much as it was an emotional response. But that's what the Gemara says. Rav Yochanan Amar, no, there's still yet another reason as to why he's called Achashverosh. Kol shezochro omer ach lerosho. Oh, he put his hand on his head. Ach lerosho. Just hearing Achashverosh's name, it was so awful. Reb Chanina Omer she'akol naser rashin biyama. Everyone became poor during his days because he overtaxed people. Shneimar vayasem hamelech Achashverosh mas. He started to give a tax, and that tax led people to the point of having no more money. A very high tax bracket. Hu Achashverosh. When we see the pasuk Hu Achashverosh, the combination of the word Hu followed by his name, what do we then know about Achashverosh? Hu berisho mitchilaso v'ad sofo. He was evil from beginning to end. Hu Esav, hu berisho mitchilaso v'ad sofo. Esav was also a Rasha beginning to end. Hu dasan v'aviram, the same thing. Hin berishon mitchilasan v'ad sofo, bad from beginning to end. Next, Hu Hamelech Achaz, hu berisho mitchilaso v'ad sofo, bad beginning to end. But then we flip to the positives. Avram, hu Avraham. Avram, without the hay. To Avram with the hay, with the word Hu in the middle. Hu b'tzidko mitchilas v'ad sofo. Tzaddik his whole life. Hu Aaron and Moshe hin b'tzidko mitchilasan v'ad sofo. And both of them were tzaddikim their whole lives. The David who katan. He was the small one here, referencing humility, not physical size. Hu b'kadnusa mitchilas v'ad sofo. He maintained this humility his whole life. Kishem sheb'kadnusa hikten atzmo eitz l'mishagalim mimena b'Torah. Just like when he was a child, he knew his place relative to those who knew more Torah than him. Kach b'malchuso, so too in his kingship. Hikten atzmo. There were those who were wiser. He knew what lane he was in, and he stayed in his lane. Hamolech, what does that mean? Hamolech mihodu v'akush. Amar Rav shemalach me'atzmo, that he made himself into the king. And Amrei lo l'shvach v'amrei lo l'gnai. Some say it was a good thing that he did that. Not that it was good that he was king, but that he did the right thing in making himself a king. Some say that it was l'shvach, and some say that it was l'gnai. This is reminiscent of the language by Noach, except that this person is a categorical Rasha. So it says the Gemara, what's the side of shvach? Amar le l'shvach, or 12, 15 lines up. De lo hava inish d'chashiv v'malka kavaseh. He was the most chashiv Rasha that there was. So that made sense at that time that he should be the king. The Amrei lo l'gnai. Some say that this was really a denigration. Really, he had nothing to do with the kingship, nothing at all. However, he was rich. Umamona Yeseruhu the Yoivakam. I remember when I was a kid, like Ross Perot, the only way he got on the ballot was because he was a billionaire, but with skills notwithstanding. But if you have enough money, you can get your name on the ballot. And if you have enough money, you can buy the election. So what the Gemara was saying is, we're not sure he's such a chacham. He may have been a terrible king. We're not sure. We'll see some samples about whether or not he did any good work right now. But that was the chakira about whether or not he was a good king. The pasuk says, "Mehodu ve'ad Kush," that he ruled over Hodu and all the way to Kush. Rav Shmuel. There's a machlokas between them about the physical locations of these two cities. Chadam or Hodu b'sofa olam and Kush b'sofa olam. That Hodu is, let's say, where America is, and Kush is where China is. They're exactly on the other side of the world. The Chadam are no Hodu v'Kush gabe hadad yavukaim. They were right next to one another. But kishem shemalach al Hodu v'Kush kach malach misofa olam ad sofa. Just like the two cities, had they been on each side of the world, it would have been similar, even if they were in the same side of the world. In other words, he was the ruler of the entire world. Kayotze b'davar ata omer. We have a very similar type of discussion, machlokas, as we have by Shlomo HaMelech. Ki hu rodeh b'chol Ever Hanar miTifsach ve'ad Aza. That he, Shlomo, ruled over everything from Ever Hanar, from Tifsach ad Aza. Rabbi Shmuel, a similar machlokas. Chadamer Tifsach v'sofa olam ve'az v'sofa olam. One says that the cities were on opposite sides of the globe. But kishem shemalach al tifsach ve'al aza kach malach al kol ha'olam kulo. So we don't really know where these cities were located, both for Achashverosh in regards to Hodu and Kush, and for Shlomo in regards to Tifsach and Aza. We don't know. 8 lines from the bottom. Sheva ve'esrim u'mea Medina. We know the pasuk says that there were 127 countries, and the Gemara makes a drasha. Amar Rav Chizda b'tchila malach al Sheva. Initially, he was just the ruler over 7 cities. Ulv'sof malach al Esrim, and then he grew to 20. Ulv'sof malach al Mea. Finally, he reached a peak of 100 cities. Is it 127? We don't know how to count. It's not so simple. But anyways, the Gemara says, if the way that you're learning this type of writing in the Torah of Sheva, the Esrim, Umei, if that's how you're going to learn it is that way, we have another pasuk that you have no avenue to learn in such a way. Because Vishnei Chaye Amram, Sheva Ushloshim U'Ma'as Shana. Because it's also counted out 7 and 30 and 100. What question are we all thinking about? What would have been a better example? Sarah. Why didn't it say, but you make Chaya Sarah? Sheva Shanim Esrim Shana. It was very strange. The Gemara doesn't ask this question. It doesn't matter because the formatting is really the question, and the formatting is the same of the single digits and then the tens and then the hundreds. It's weird that we didn't call from the exact same number. But the Gemara says over here that we're asking from this other place of Amram. So it says the Gemara, my dar. What?
The answer might be by Sarah. It says. The design of the pasuk is a little bit different because it's broken up. There's a word shana after each one. Here it's Sheva Shloshim Shana. Just like it's.
That's a good answer.
Sheva Medina.
I mean, it's more of an exact match. That's true. Yeah. I don't know if the word mea would have ruined the comparison, but that's a good point. All right, so it says the Gemara, my darshes pay, that's rhetorical. We have no way of darshaning this because that's how old he was. First he was 7, and then he was 30, and then he was 100. We know how to count. That's not the hard part. So it says the Gemara, therefore, there must be a different answer. Shiny hacha. When it comes to Megillah Esther, when we said, Sheva ve'esrim u'mea, that had to be different. Why? The Kra Yiseru. We didn't need those numbers in the first place. Michti. Let's analyze this. The pasuk says, Ksiv mehodu ve'ad kush. We already knew that he was ruling over the whole world. Sheva ve'esrim u'mea medina lamali. So then why count the 127? Therefore, shmamina the drasha, that we can therefore make the drasha that he first ruled over 7 and then 20 and then 100. 2 dots, 5 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis teach us, Shlosha malchu bekipa. There were 3 who ruled bekipa. Rashi, outer margin, this time where Tosfos normally goes, second line from the bottom. Malchu bekipa, tachas kol kipas harakia. They ruled over the entire world. This is something that we are not familiar with, where you have one person who's in charge of the whole globe. The population of the world at that time was drastically less than it was now. Nevertheless, these people ruled over the world. Who are the 3? Achav v'Achashverosh u'Nebuchadnezzar. Achav, because by Achav, what does it say? Chai Hashem Elokecha im yesh goyim u'mamlacha asher lo shalach Adoni Shem levakeshcha. What was going on with Achav? He was trying to find Eliyahu Navi, and every time he would find someone, he would send out his troops and say, "Oh, did you see Eliyahu Navi?" And he'd make them make a shvua. So it says the Gemara, they were sent all over the world. If he didn't rule over them, then how could he force people to make a shvua? It must therefore be that he was malach al kol ha'olam kulo tachas hakipa. Is that the language, tachas? Malcho bekipa. So then that's. Yeah. I don't think Achav was wearing a kippah. What? Shlosha malchu b'kippah. That is you're
No,
come on.
Everybody wore hats back then.
Shlosha malchu b'kippah. It's the Pope. It's the papal kippah. By the way, they for sure bought that at Eichelers. It's in the satin collection with the bean on with the button.
Where else
But
did you get it?
I don't know.
They sold in Italy.
I don't know. Okay, so that was person number one. Person number two, Nebuchadnezzar, because the pasuk says, "But everyone would have no choice but to give their necks over to the king." And Achashverosh had Amran, because it says, "Sheva ve'esrim u'mea medina." However, says the Gemara on the top of Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Siman Shastach, we'll get to the Shin, the Samach, the Dalet, and the Chaf. We'll reference them four times. We'll reference them as we move along. The Suleka, were there not other people who ruled over the whole world? Va'ika Shlomo. Shlomo is the Shin of Shastach. Lo Salik Malchusi. Says the Gemara, he didn't finish his reign. Apparently, the Shadim took him out of his rule. Says the Gemara, that he went from the king to being a regular lay person. That he was king and then was demoted and then came back into the kingship. Maybe we should say he did rule over the entire world. Says the Gemara, not correct. Shlomo he had something else going for him. He actually ruled on the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Forget about the vastness of the world, Kush, or the whole world, or Tachas Kippah. Doesn't matter. He had the upper worlds going on and the lower worlds. How do we know? That's a beautiful diuk. It sounded almost like too good to be true, but he couldn't have possibly sat in the chair of Hashem. It must be that the chair that he sat on also impacted what was going on upstairs. Says the Gemara, what's the samach in Shastach? That's the samach. That's why they put in these mnemonics. They're very helpful. Maybe Sancheiriv was a ruler over the whole world. And says the Gemara, it sees seems to be that he ruled over everything. Says the Gemara, not true about Sancheiriv, because he never conquered Jerusalem. Who is the Dalet in Shastach? Says the Gemara 10 lines down. That's our Dalet. Malka, the king of Daryavish, Kosav, he wrote for all of the nations, for all of the peoples, and for all of the languages. The Dairin Bechol Ara, who lived in all of the lands, Shlamchon Yaske, you should have a lot of peace. So therefore, it seems to be that he was ruling over everyone. Says the Gemara, no. We know that there were 7 countries or 7 locales that he did not rule over. He had his guys, his team, rule over how many cities? 120. How many cities were there? 120. It's not cities. How many, centers, Medinas? Yeah, Medina, thank you. How many Medinas were there? There were 127. Clearly, he was not ruling over 7 of them. Quarter of the way down, Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Va'ika Koresh. Koresh is going to be our Shastach. He's the Chaf. So now we've spoken about them all. We've got Shlomo, we've got Sancheiriv, we've got Daryavish, and we've got Koresh. Says the Gemara, how do we know that Koresh ruled over the whole world? He said about himself, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave me the entire everything. So says the Gemara, he's just a little pompous. The guy's talking he's just speaking embellishment. It's not correct. It's just talking out of turn. Says the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down at the 2 dots. Put on your math caps, everybody. What does that pasuk mean? After all, it seems to be right when he got settled, he was the king, and then it says, when was he l'sheves hamelech? So Amar Rava, my kisheves, it took him a few years to get settled. Why did it take him a few years to get settled? Because he was dealing with a math problem. Oh, it's like the Gra wrote a book on Euclidean geometry in the bathroom, because he didn't want to be thinking about Torah. But when you're the Gra and you're immersed in Torah, so it's a little hard not to think about Torah. I don't think about Torah in the bathroom. I'm from. I'm so from. I'm frummer than the Gra.
Didn't have the Pythagorean theorem. That's the question.
He knew Pythagorean theorem. I can assure you. It doesn't matter. He knew Pythagorean theorem. If you're writing a book on Euclidean geometry, you can figure. When was Pythagoras? How old is Pythagoras? That's very, very old. Pythagoras. No, he's Greek. Yeah. No. Even that's probably the case. This is arithmetic. Thank you, David, for lowering us back to where we belong. That's correct. So says the Gemara, what was bothering him? Amar Achashverosh said, here was the concern. Belshazzar made a mistake. He made a mistake about how much time it was going to take from one Beis Hamikdash to the next. We know that it was supposed to be a 70-year gap. Achashverosh said about himself, I made a math equation below Ta'ina, and I didn't make a mistake. That was Kisheves Hamelch. That's when he calmed down. What was the math mistake that Belshazzar made? So we're going to learn his mistake over the next 15 lines or so. That we know that from Tanakh that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would save the Jews after 70 years from Babel. The pasuk also reads that it's going to be 70 years from the destruction of Yerushalayim. You can already see, we don't exactly know what the starting point is of counting. All we know 70 is 70, but we don't know, is it Babel or Yerushalayim? We'll ask that question explicitly, but what was Belshazzar's cheshbon? Cheshov arba'in v'chamesh de Nebuchadnezzar. He counted the 45 years of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar because he destroyed Yerushalayim and was king for 45 more years. Good start to the math equation. The Esrim Mutzlas de Avil Merudach. Avil Merudach was also a ruler, and he ruled for 23 years. We're up to 68. The Tarte Didei, 2 years of Achashverosh. He says it must be Hashivim. So that was Belshazzar's cheshbon. And then what then would have happened is that at that point they would have said, we see that year 70 nothing happened because his math equation was wrong. And then api kamane debei mikdashavi ishtamishbu. And what would happen is that, as we will soon see, that Belshazzar would have then taken out the utensils from the Beis Hamikdash that were kept from the first Beis Hamikdash, planned to be used for the second Beis Hamikdash. But once the 70 years hit, they said Hashem's not coming back. So then says the Gemara as follows. How do we know his ruling is 45 years? The Gemara says halfway down, Yud Aleph Amud Beis to Amar Mar, tough little brisa. Is this a brisa? I don't know if this is a brisa. Amar Mar, Galu b'sheva, Galu b'shmona. There was an exile, I should say, at 7 and at 8. We'll figure out what that means in a minute. And Galu b'shmona asrei, and Galu b'chasrei. And there was also an exiling that took place at 18 and 19. Let's explain. Says the Gemara, Galu b'sheva, in the 7th year, l'kibush Yehoyakim, after Yehoyakim conquered, that was when Galos Yehoyachin started. She shmona leNebuchadnezzar. So let's remember the number 8. This was 8 years into Nebuchadnezzar. And Galu b'shmona asrei l'kibush Yehoyakim. And in the 18th year of Yehoyakim's reign, that is when Galos Tzidkiyahu took place. She chasrein leNebuchadnezzar. How do we know that to be true? Because we have another brisa. Shana Rishona kibesh Ninveh. In his first year he conquered Ninveh. Shnia kibesh Yehoyakim. Uchsi vayhi b'shloshim v'sheva shana legalos Yehoyachin. 37 years into Galos Yehoyachin. Malach Yehuda b'shnei masar chodesh. Yehuda ruled. Yehuda was ruled in the 12th month, the Esrim Chamisha Chodesh, and then Nasa Avil Merudach Melech Bavel, this king who we know that followed Nebuchadnezzar, Bishnas Malchuso, in one of the years of his rulings as Rosh Yehoyachin Melech Yehuda B'Yotzei Osomi Beis HaKel. So forget all the details in the pasuk for just a moment and let's do some math. Tamne, we know the 8 years from the first part of the Galus that we spoke about with Yehoyachin, the Tlasin V'Sheva, the 37 years that were referenced in the pasuk, Hare Arba'in v'Chamesh de Nebuchadnezzar, and then the same math we saw before. V'Esrim Utzlas to Avil Merodach. How do we know how long his reign was? Says the Gemara. It's a Gemara. It's just a tradition. We don't have it in writing anywhere. But Avil Merudach seemingly ruled for 23 years. And this is where Belshazzar went wrong. Amar Hashta Vade Sulo Mifriki. Kodesh Baruch Hu is still not going to. At this point, we're for sure the math. Because Belshazzar thought his math was right. So once it hits the 70th year, Belshazzar was afik mane debei mikdashav yishtamesh bu. Hainu dekamar le Daniel. This is what Daniel said. What it says in Sefer Daniel. Ve'almare shema yisrael ma'amta. You made yourself great over the heavens. U'lemane di baise. And for the Kalim that were in his house, heisayu kadamach, that you took them out before you. What happened to Belshazzar? It's not good. Uchsiv bei belel yakatil Belshazzar malka kasda. He died that night. Uchsiv, the pasuk also reads v'dar yavesh mada kibel malchus kvar shnin shitin v'tartin. He was able to, Daryavish became the king at the age of 62 years old. It's not a young chicken back in the day. 62 is an older gentleman at the time. And Amar, after all of this math, Achashverosh says, Ihu Belshazzar was mitatai. He's the one who made a mistake in regards to his cheshbon. But Ana chashivna v'lo I made a better math equation. Miksiv, does the pasuk say that we should be counting le malchus bavel? Does it say we should be counting from a king's reign in Bavel? No. Le Bavel ksiv, not about Malchus. but about when the actual Galus began with the people. So that's a totally different time. How much different is this math equation? Says the Gemara, Tamne, it's a difference of 8 years. What happened during those 8 years? There was a math, there was some math that was done, and the 8 years were comprised of the leadership as follows. One was a leader of Belshazzar, but we learned he died. Who took over after him? We just learned that was Daryavish v'chamesh to Daryavish v'koresh. So his math was a little bit different. This was Achashverosh's math. And then says the Gemara, 2 lines into the middle with lines. Once Achashverosh looked at his own math and saw that nothing happened. All right, my math was right. Belshazzar's was wrong. I waited an extra 8 years. Now it's time to use these kelim in the Beis Hamikdash. This guy was rolling the dice. And apik mana de Beis Mikdash shavi ishtamish bu basatan brike benem v'haragas Vashti. Remember the story of Vashti? That means that the whole backstory to the beginning of the Hashgacha Pratis that all of Megillah was about was on this math equation. How do we calculate 70? And when Achashverosh critiqued Belshazzar, he was dead at that time, but when he said Belshazzar has to be wrong because he died, and then he's like, well, how did he go wrong? Oh, let me redo the math. Oh, we're only off by 8 years. The 8 years passed. He touched the spoils. He touched the Beis Hamikdash, the Kelim, and then that was the first domino. So when we start our story of Megillas Esther, that first domino was pushed already when Achashverosh touched the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash. Then Vashti died, and it opened up the portal for Esther. It's an unbelievable backstory. It's so simple, and it's psukim. It's psukim. So this is the backstory of the Gemara as to how we know that Achashverosh was wrong. So it says the Gemara, we know that he was wrong because Vashti died. So it says the Gemara, but how was he wrong? He did very good math. He said it wasn't Malchus Bavel, it was just Bavel as it relates to the people. So I don't understand. What's the problem? So it says the Gemara, Ihunami mitatai. He also made a mistake in his math. Instead of counting from when the Jews were exiled from Bavel, he should have counted from the destruction of Yerushalayim. Sof kama b'tzira. And how much more time should it have been? This should not say chadesar, because that's not how we count in Aramaic. It should be chadsrei. It should be 11 years. Okay, Ihu Kamal Malach, how many years did he rule for? It's Arbesar. So that means that by Arbesar Didei, in the 14th year of his reign, he should have been the one to build the Beis Hamikdash, but he wasn't. Why does the pasuk say Ba'aden betilas avidas Beis Elaka di Yerushalayim? It said that they stopped the building of the Beis Hamikdash. So where was his math wrong? All looked well and good. After you factor in the 11 years, so that's 19 years longer than Belshazzar and 11 years longer than the math that Achashverosh thought. So Amar Rava, they made a mistake when they were talking about the kings, the small kings, right? You have Belshazzar and you have Koresh and Daryavish. So it says the Gemara, some of them only ruled for partial years. So Amar Rava, Shanim Mikutos Habo, we made the math wrong, so it should have been actually a little bit longer. That brings us to the top of Yud Beis Amud Aleph. We have a brisa that supports this idea. Tanya Nami Hachi. Another year needed to be added. He added that year. Now, lest you all think that this math equation should have been Dvarim Pshutim, Daniel made a mistake also. It wasn't just the Goyim. And it was also the Talmidei Chachamim. It wasn't a simple thing. You know, we would love to learn Tanakh. That's what we learned a couple of days ago when we heard that there was supposed to be a Targum on Nevi'im and Ksuvim, and Kadosh Baruch Hu Yatzis Abaskon says, no, you can't do that because there's Kate Sayamim. We try to make these cheshbonos, the people who really know how to learn Tanakh. They try to make the cheshbonos. It's got to be soon. It's got to be this. Says the Gemara. Daniel didn't know how to do it. Second line. Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Amar Rava Af Daniel ta b'hai chushbana. Dichsib. But what did he write? B'shnas achas lemalcho ani Daniel binosi b'sfarim. I had to investigate in the Sfarim. Dekamer binosi. And I don't know exactly how the word binosi traveled, how it explains, but michlal deta, it implies the fact that it said binosi bisfarim, it implies that he made a mistake. Now, either way, forget all of the people who are involved. We have two psukim that don't make sense. Says the Gemara, Mikol Makom Kashu Kraya Hadade. We have two psukim that go head to head. Ksiv Melos Lebavel, Uchsiv Lecharvos Yerushalayim. So if you're going to say that it's 70 years, but we have two different psukim. One that says we should focus on the melos of Bavel, and one is the charbos of Yerushalayim. So what should we do? So it says the Gemara Amar Rava lepekida be'alma. What we referenced on the bottom of the previous page, they made some type of pekida, some type of remembrance ceremony. That was the pasuk on the bottom that says badin b'telas avedas beiseloka, that they stopped building, but there was no actual remembrance taking place there. Meaning, we needed to count the 70 from the churv of Yerushalayim and not having anything to do with Bavel. Hainu d'chsiv.
Earlier. The
No.
construction of Yerushalayim happened before they went out. Bavel?
No, he said Malchus Bavel.
So the pasuk that was how we touched. Michael might be saying good. That was how we tried to get out of. That's how we tried to critique Belshazzar, because Belshazzar said that he thought it was Malchus Bavel. It may actually be Malchus Bavel. That's very possible, because Belshazzar was wrong. We don't know. We have no idea what the actual math is, but I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know. That's good. So it says the Gemara, "V'hainu d'chsiv kol mar Koresh melech paras kol mamlechos haaretz nosan li Hashem elokei shamayim v'hu pakad alai livnos lo bayis b'Yerushalayim pakad." He did a pakid, he did a remembrance, something a little zecher. We're at the last short line, I should say, and Yud Beis and Aleph. We're going to plow through over the next 14 minutes or so we can have 30 seconds to get to Marv. And we're going to get to 3 lines till the bottom of the page. Let's go. Darash Rav Nachman Baruch Chizda. What does the pasuk mean when it says Ko Amar Hashem Limshicho LeKoresh Asher Hechzakti B'Yamino? The pasuk seems to imply that Koresh is Meshicho. It says the Gemara, Koresh Mashiach. How could you say that about Koresh? Absolutely not. Koresh Baruch Hu Mashiach. Koresh Baruch Hu said to whoever Mashiach was, Kobel ani loch al Koresh. I'm complaining to you about Koresh. Ani amarti, that Koresh should have been the one who yivne bais v'kabitz gil yosai. That Koresh should have been the one to be the ingatherer. Who amar mi bachem mikol amovayal. Who is the one who's going to actually get this done? And Rashi indicates that he's not the one who got it done. Other people got it done, but Hashem wanted him to do it. 2 dots, 3 lines into the wide lines. What does the pasuk mean when it says Chel parasu madai hapartimim, and then uchsiv lemalche parasu madai? So there's partimim, which is some type of governor role, which was true about parasu madai, and it also says that there was malachim by parasu madai. So how did they work it out? Amar Rava isnuye isnu bahadade. They had a conditional deal with one another. Iminon malche minaychu. Iminon malche. If the king is from us, then minaychu ifreche. Then the partumim, the governor, is going to be from you. Minaychu malche, and if from you you're going to get the king, then minan ifreche, then we'll be the ones who have the governors trading roles. Next piece of Gemara Baharo, so as Osher Kavod Malchus, so showing the wealth of the home. Amar of Yossi Bar Chanina Malamed Shulabash Big Day Kahuna, that Achashverosh, the Russia, what a chutzpah, he put on the big day kahuna. He had access because we were in between the Batei Mikdash. Okay, Ksiv Hacha. One pasuk says, how do we know that you were the big day kahuna? One pasuk says, Yikar Tiferes Gedula. So Ksiv Hasam the Chavadul Tiferes, that we know that the begadim of the Kohanim Gedolim had that phraseology, and the word Tiferes connects both cases. So therefore, we can assume that Achashverosh were the big day kahuna. Third of the way down of V'milos Hayamim Ha'ela. This is referencing the big feast, that a big part. All of the distant cities. Shapir Avad. Why was it a good move? To Kariv Rechika Beresha. He first engaged the people who were further out. To B'nei Maseh, Kol Emas Tebayim Mefaisle. The people who live in town, he can always be Mefaisle them. Everyone come to my house for dinner, but the people from far, it's a big tircha. So 180 days is the party on the outside. Let it be. And that is one approach to say that he's so wise. However, Ramando Amar Tipeshai, the one who says that he wasn't wise, the Baile the Kruve B'nei Maseh Beresha. You're better engaging your close people first. The Mardu Behanach, that if the people from the other group, from the outside, come and rebel, Hani Havu Kaime Bahade. At least you'll have your people as a ring around you to protect you. Says the Gemara, Shalu Talmid of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Why was it that the Jews, also Ador Kliya, why were they deserving of destruction? So Amar Lahem, the Rebbe said to the students, Imru Atem, You give me the answer. Great pedagogy, by the way. When people ask questions, sometimes they just want to hear themselves talk. So you should give them the opportunity to talk. So good, let them talk. So they said, Amrulo mipnei shenanu misudasa shalos Russia. Maybe the reason why is because they benefited from the Suda of Haman, of Achashverosh. In Cain, the Rebbe said back to the Talmidim, Shebeshushan yehargu, the people who benefited in Shushan, they should be the ones who are going to be killed. But Shebechol ha'olam kulo al yehargu, but the rest of the Jews in the world should not be killed. So then the students are like, good point. And therefore, Amrlo, Emor Ata, Rebbe, you tell us what you think, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So he responds, Amar lehem mipnei shishtachavu letzelem. They bowed down to an idol that Achashverosh had. So that's why they deserve destruction. So Amrlo, if that's true, then v'chim asu panim yesh badavar. How can you ever have a Kadosh Baruch Hu being Yisa panim? Hashem at the end of the day didn't kill all the Jews. The Gzera was overturned. But if they did Avodah Zarah, why would Hashem show them Yisa panim? They should have been killed. So Amar lahem, heim lo asu elo lapanim. They only did it on their face. Kadosh Baruch Hu lo asim imahem elo lapanim. It was only on the face and not internal. It wasn't the Kadosh Baruch Hu was deep down ready to kill them, but he created a frame that looked like he was ready to kill them. Mida keneged mida. V'hainu dichsiv kilo anami libo, that it was not a response from his heart. 2 dots halfway down. B'chatzar ginas bitan hamelech. The chatzar is a garden. A chatzar is a courtyard. A ginas is a garden. A bitan is specifically an orchard area where there's only for trees. Now we have to understand all of these different locations. We don't know what the footprint looked like, but Rav and Shmuel, they each argued about how this party looked. Chad Amar Haroy Lechatzer Lechatzer. You had different wristband to get into different sections of his property. Maybe you were just a courtyard guy. Haroy Lagina Lagina. The ones in the gardens were probably a little more chashuv. They had a different color wristband. Haroy the bitan, to go into the orchard of the bitan, that's where they would go. That's one sheet in the Amoraim. However, V'chad Amar Hoshivon B'chatzer V'lo Echzikasan. Some say that they put everyone in the chatzer, but there wasn't enough space. Begina. Then they expanded to the garden area of V'lo Echzikasan. Still too many people. Achichnis and the bitan V'echzikasan, until they opened up the gates to the orchard that could hold everyone. However, in Masnisa Tana we have a third opinion. Everyone was, they entered through the chatzer, and they had 2 doors. They were allowed to walk around the garden and walk around the orchard. Everyone could go wherever they wanted. 2/3 of the way down. What do these terminologies mean? My chur, says the Gemara, Rav Amar Chari Chari, they were each lying on beds, and this type of bed had this kind of tapestry needlework going on. Ushmuel Amar Milas Levana Hitzia Lahem. It was some type of white wool that they were lying upon, because remember that their tables were like little lay couches, like little futons with a little table. That's how. What does karpas mean? Says the Gemara, Rav Yossi Bar Chanina karim shel pasim. They were pillows that were made out of wool. What does al galile kesef ve'amudei sheish? Mitos zahav v'chasef, that they were lying down on silver posts and on gold and silver. What was going on here? Says the Gemara, Tanya Yehuda Amar Roy lekesef lekesef. Depended on how chashuv you were. If you were a regular guest, you only got a silver bedpost. Again, for the meal or whatever you were lying on. Roy lezav lezav. If you guys wanted gold, then if you needed gold, you deserved gold, then you would have gotten gold. Amar Rabbi Nechemia can't be. That creates so much jealousy. You see the hierarchy sitting in front of you. It's so in your face. It's not right. It's socially off. You shouldn't do that. No, the actual bed that they were lying upon was silver, and the legs of all of the beds were the same. The tops were silver and the bottoms were gold. It says the Gemara Bahad Vashesh that it was resting on a floor made of Bahad Vashesh. Amar Rav Yossi Avanim shemischotetos al ba'alehen. These are stones that are very sought after, very hard to find by the people who own them, very expensive. Omer Avnei Nezer misnosasos al admaso. These beautiful Avnei Nezer, these beautiful gems that were they were very hard to find. There were a lot of trials and tribulations that one had to go through to get it. What does the pasuk mean when it says V'dar v'socheres? It says a Gemara Rav Amar Dari Dari, that there were rows of gems. Ushmuel Amar Evan Tova Yesh B'kirchei Hayam. There was one gorgeous some type of gem. V'dara Shema. The name of the gem was Dara. Hoshiva be'em sasud me'ir lahem kitzarayim. And when they put it up in the middle of the room, it looked like it was the middle of the day. It was able to shine with such a brilliance. The Rabbi Shmuel Tana. What is the reason why it says Dar v'socheres? Shekara deror lechol ba'alei schora. Dror, free for all the sechora, for all the merchants, meaning he didn't put taxes on them. This is a great thing where people who own businesses don't have to pay tax. That sounds wonderful. I don't know. That would be great. Then the Gemara says, Vishkosa b'chlizav v'kelim michelim shonim. What does it mean? He had cups that were, what did he want to say? Kelim shoni doesn't mean different. Mishunim b'bayile. If you want to say that they're different kelim, it should have said mishunim. Shonim seems to me that it repeats. So what does it mean? Repeats it. Should have said Mishunim. Amar Rava Yotzis of Baskal v'Amr Lahem. At that time, there was a Baskal that came from the heavens. Rishonim, a reference to Baal Shatter, who died from touching these utensils. Kalu, he died mipnei kelim because he picked up the kelim, having done the wrong math about the 70. Ve'atem, and you Achashverosh and Haman and your whole party, you guys are making a big mistake. Ve'atem shonin b'hem. You're repeating that error. That's why it says shonim kelim v'kelim shonim. That you're repeating the same ridiculous crime that Baal Shatter did of messing around with the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash. You watch the guy die. Why would you mess around? You're not sure your math is right. If Daniel's not sure, you shouldn't be sure. Safek pikuach nefashos the hakel. Like, why would you go and take the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash having watched him die? Too much confidence. V'yein malchus Rav. What does that mean? Amar Rav melamish kol echad be'echad hashkeu yain shegadol himenu b'shanim. Everyone drank wine that was at least a year older than their age. So they already had the big section at Jewel, and it was listed by age. Oh, you're 46. Here's a 47-year-old bottle of wine. What does that mean? My chadas. Amar Rav Chanan mishum Reb Meir chadas shel Torah. They followed the laws of the Torah when they ate. Okay, that by korbanos we have this rule that the volume of the korban has to be larger than that of the liquid. Same over there. What does ein ones mean? That everyone drank from wine from their own country, namely that they knew the potency of they didn't have labels of alcohol, but they knew how the wine was made in their country. So they'd only drink their wine. Ein ones, that they wouldn't be in a place of ones of having been drunk. And they were doing the will of each man. What does this mean? Each man. Mordechai, how do we know he's called Ish? Ish Yehudi, and Haman Ish Tsar ve'oyev. We'll stop right here, 3 lines from the bottom. We'll pick up on Shabbos Yemir Hashem. I think 254 for a blot and a half, and wishing you all a beautiful night.